Emma gripped the chipped counter of her tiny kitchen as the contraction tore through her, a low guttural sound escaping her throat. She wasn't prepared for how quickly the pain had gone from sharp discomfort to an all-consuming wave that stole her breath. She stared at the faded linoleum floor, focusing on the tiny cracks in the pattern to keep from screaming. Her phone sat on the counter, the digital clock glaring at her, 11:47 p.m. Another contraction had hit just 6 minutes after the last one. Too close together. She had been telling herself all evening that she could manage a bit longer at home. She'd read all the articles, sat through every online birthing class alone, memorized the breathing techniques. But no one had warned her how terrifying it would feel when the moment actually came, how isolated the world would suddenly seem when you had no one standing by your side. The apartment was painfully quiet. The silence pressed against her ears, broken only by the old refrigerator's hum and her ragged breathing. She imagined how different it would be if she hadn't been left alone in all of this. There would have been a hand gripping hers, an encouraging voice telling her she was strong, maybe even laughter to ease the fear. But that was just fantasy. The reality was she had only herself. She pressed a palm to her belly and whispered, her voice shaky but full of desperate affection. "It's okay, baby. We're going to be okay. Mommy's got you." The baby responded with a strong kick, and Emma almost laughed, tears pricking her eyes. "You're stronger than me already, huh?" Her hospital bag was packed and waiting by the door, a symbol of her determination to be ready for this journey. She had triple-checked it 100 times over the last month. Baby clothes folded neatly, tiny mittens, diapers, a soft blanket, her nightgown, toiletries. She even tucked in a copy of her mother's worn Bible, though she hadn't opened it in years. Something about it felt like carrying a piece of home with her, even though home had never been a safe place to lean on. She leaned on the counter, still panting, still trembling, and her mind drifted back against her will. Back to him. Back to the man she had tried so hard to forget. Daniel Carter. His name, even unspoken for so long, still sent a dull ache through her chest. Daniel had been everything once. Brilliant, ambitious, magnetic. He came from a family that seemed untouchable, wealthy, respected, polished in every way she wasn't. Emma had been the girl from the other side of town, working 2 jobs while attending night classes, hoping someday she could build a better life. Somehow, impossibly, their worlds collided, and for a fleeting time, she had believed she belonged in his. He made her feel seen, special, loved. She had been foolish enough to imagine forever. But forever turned into silence. A single text that ended everything, no explanation, no closure. One day he was in her arms, the next he was gone. She had cried herself hollow, begged for answers that never came, and eventually had to build her world again piece by broken piece. And now here she was, on the verge of motherhood, carrying not his child, thank God for that small mercy, but carrying alone. She told herself she didn't need him, didn't need anyone. But as the pain seared through her again, her body folding forward with the force of it, she couldn't help the whispered thought, "I don't want to be alone tonight." Her hand fumbled for her phone, considering, for one reckless second, calling someone. Anyone. A friend. A neighbor. Even her estranged sister. But who would come at midnight? Who would sit beside her with patience? Who would steady her voice and hold her hand? The answer was no one. She had made her peace with that months ago. So she shoved the thought aside and pulled the hospital bag over her shoulder with trembling determination. Every step toward the door felt monumental. She gritted her teeth as another contraction racked her body, forcing her to pause, bent over, breath sharp and shallow. She finally reached the street outside. The summer air was warm, carrying faint traces of car exhaust and fried food from the diner down the block. She waved at the first cab she saw, desperation giving her strength. The driver, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, looked startled when she climbed in, clutching her belly, sweat glistening on her forehead. "Hospital," she managed to gasp, naming the one nearest. His eyes widened in understanding. "Hang on, miss. We'll get you there fast." The city blurred by in streaks of neon and shadow. Emma pressed her forehead against the cool glass, trying to ground herself. She watched people still living their lives in the midnight glow, couples arm in arm, college kids laughing on sidewalks, a street musician drawing a haunting melody from his violin. To them, it was just another night. To her, it was the night everything changed. She clutched her belly, whispering prayers she didn't even know she remembered. Please let everything be okay. Please let me be strong enough. Please let my baby come safe. The contractions grew more insistent, her knuckles white where they clutched the seat. The driver glanced at her nervously a few times, muttering encouragements in broken English. Emma tried to smile, tried to hide her fear, but the tears kept spilling unchecked. At last the hospital loomed, a tall, impersonal building glowing with sterile lights. The cab screeched to a halt, and the driver jumped out, yelling for help. Within moments, Emma was whisked inside by a nurse with kind eyes and firm hands. "We've got you," the nurse soothed, guiding her into a wheelchair. "You're not alone anymore." But the words rang hollow in Emma's ears. She was alone. Even surrounded by bustling staff and glaring lights, she felt it like a weight pressing on her chest. This wasn't how she had dreamed it would be. Not like this. Not empty-handed. Not broken-hearted. Yet she straightened her spine as best she could, wiped at her tears, and whispered again to the baby within her. "We'll be okay. I'll make sure of it." Her voice trembled, but it carried a promise. The delivery room spun with activity, nurses adjusting IV lines, checking monitors, setting trays of instruments with metallic clinks that rang louder than they should have. Emma lay back against the hospital bed, her breath ragged, her gown sticking to her with sweat. The pain had reached a point beyond words, beyond reason. It consumed her, left her gasping like she was drowning. She closed her eyes, trying to focus on breathing, on surviving. And then she heard it. That voice. "Let's keep her calm. Check her vitals again. Steady, everyone." Her eyes flew open. For a moment she thought she was hallucinating, that the pain was making her hear things. But then the door swung wider, and he stepped in. Daniel. Her heart lurched so violently she thought it might stop altogether. He looked almost unreal in the harsh fluorescent lights. Tall, broad-shouldered, that same commanding presence she remembered all too well. His dark hair was neatly combed, his jaw clean-shaven, his white coat crisp. He wore the air of someone in control, the kind of man who could walk into chaos and bend it to his will. And then his eyes met hers. Everything inside her fractured. Memories she had fought to bury rushed back like floodwater. His arms around her on cold nights, his lips brushing her forehead, the sound of his laughter when she teased him. The promises whispered in the dark. And the silence that followed when he walked away. She wanted to scream, to demand he leave, but all she could manage was a strangled whisper. What are you doing here?" His gaze flickered, just for a moment, breaking that confident mask. "I'm your attending physician tonight," he said quietly, almost carefully, like he was stepping onto thin ice. "Emma, you're in good hands." Good hands. The words cut like glass. She had trusted those hands once, trusted him with her heart, her future. And he had thrown it away. Another contraction hit, ripping through her body like fire. She cried out, fingers clawing at the bedrail. A nurse murmured encouragement, but it wasn't enough. Emma wanted to disappear, to crawl away from the humiliation of lying here, vulnerable, while the man who had abandoned her now stood at her bedside. Daniel moved closer, his hands sure and steady as he checked the monitor. His voice was calm, clinical, professional. But his eyes lingered on her, full of something unspoken. Guilt, maybe, regret, a storm she couldn't name. "Your progress is good," he said, his tone careful. "You're strong, Emma, you're doing this." She turned her head away, biting back tears. She wouldn't let him see her cry. Not now, not when her body was betraying her with weakness and pain. He hesitated, then softly added, "I never thought I'd see you like this again." Her heart clenched. She wanted to spit out words, to lash back, but her breath caught as another contraction forced its way through. She screamed, unable to stop herself, the sound raw and primal. Nurses hurried, voices overlapping with commands, but Daniel's voice cut through the noise. "Breathe, Emma, stay with me, look at me." She hated him for it, hated that even now her eyes sought his, hated that his voice still reached her when she needed it most. She forced herself to focus on his steady gaze, on the rhythm of his words, and somehow she rode the wave of pain back down. Tears blurred her vision, spilling unchecked down her cheeks. "Why you?" she whispered hoarsely when the contraction eased. "Of all people, Why you? Daniel's jaw tightened, his hands pausing for the briefest moment on the monitor. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he adjusted her IV, gave an order to the nurse, and finally leaned closer, his voice low enough only she could hear. Because life is cruel sometimes. Or maybe it's giving me a chance I don't deserve. His words rattled through her, but before she could respond, another wave of pain gripped her. Her cries filled the room, her body writhing, her soul shattering with the intensity of it. Daniel stayed beside her, calm yet visibly shaken, guiding her through, his hand briefly brushing hers though she yanked it away. Every second felt like eternity. Between the contractions, silence hung heavy between them, filled with all the things neither dared to say. She wanted to demand answers, to ask why he left, to scream that she had needed him then as much as she needed someone now. But the words tangled in her throat, choked by pain and bitterness. And Daniel, he said nothing more. But his eyes never left her, and in them, she saw something she hadn't expected. Not indifference, not coldness, but a sorrow so deep it almost broke her all over again. In that moment, Emma realized with a jolt of fear that her most vulnerable, terrifying night had been placed in the hands of the one man she swore she would never need again. And Daniel realized with a crushing weight that the woman before him, the woman he had lost, the woman he had let slip through his fingers, was about to bring life into the world. A life that was not his. And for the first time in years, Daniel Carter looked shaken.